In this episode, we will create a swarm of 5 nodes, 2 managers and 3 workers. I have selected to run a manager and a worker on Fedora and the other hosts on Debian, which would allow us to test the refactoring of our previously created base roles as we have refactored them in the previous episode. I got a request in a comment of my GitLab video to show how to deploy Docker Swarm in the Devlab. And I replied with a promise to look into it after we do some dev containers and after we do the CA, the certificate authority, because we will need it for the registry. I'm releasing this episode as a response to that comment with a big thank you for the interesting idea to Imtiaz Ali. Let's talk about Swarm. Swarm, as I see it, this is my personal opinion, is an attempt to bundle orchestration with the container engine. It allows orchestrating containers running on multiple hosts that can connect to each other. Docker supports the Swarm mode natively, so any Docker host can either initialize a swarm or join an existing swarm. Docker host operating in a swarm mode is called a node. Some nodes can be made managers, which means they have special swarm management duties in addition to their duties as Docker hosts or as workers. Let's look at our 5 new hosts. This is our inventory file, and we have the following new hosts in this file. We have a swarm primary manager, swarm other managers. So this is a group, this is a group. We have 2 groups here. This group should contain only 1 host. This group can contain any number of hosts. And we have the swarm managers group that we will need when we are setting up the swarm, and it contains the primary manager and the other manager. We have the swarm workers here, and all these are new hosts that we will work on: 131, 132, and 141, 142, and 143. We have one playbook that we will work on today. First, we start by creating all these 5 hosts. To create them, we can use a loop. We have a loop here for the purge role that we know already, and we have another loop for the LXC create that we know already. To avoid destroying the swarm by accident, I set a default value for recreate in the swarm variable file. So we have recreate is false by default. I don't want to delete the swarm because it takes a long time to build. And we have these hosts. We notice that the first manager, the primary manager, I'm using Fedora. And for the other manager, I'm using Debian because I'm not specifying any template. So this will be Debian as it is the default in our Devlab. I also use another Fedora worker and 2 Debian workers. I chose to run a mix of operating systems just for test. Basically, I wanted to test the new base role in different scenarios. So now we will be running the base role on Fedora and on Debian in the same run. First, we need to enable SSH on the Fedora hosts. So we have another loop on all our hosts, and we detect if Fedora is, if the template includes Fedora, we run the enable SSH role. Then we have the role for installing Docker, and we started by the base role that I want to test on both machines. So we run the base role on swarm managers and on swarm workers. Then we run the Docker role that I will show you in a bit. We get certificates for these all these hosts. The certificates here are not necessary, but I also wanted to test creating certificates in bulk. So this is just for testing, and you can remove it if you don't need it. Looking at the new Docker role, we see in the Docker role that first we run custom tasks for Red Hat and for Debian. These custom tasks are installing the repository. So first for Debian, we get the key ring, and we enable the repository and signed by the key ring, and we update the cache so that we have fresh installs. For Fedora or Red Hat, we install this package, which allows us to add a new repository from a URL. This would be the repository file that will be created. After we have run these tasks on Fedora and Debian, we can install Docker. So we install the Docker packages. Those are the Docker packages. Basically, in my tests, I saw that Docker CE is enough, but the documentation mentions all these, so I'm installing them. And I also need Python 3 requests and Python 3 Docker to be able to use Ansible on the Docker hosts. Then we start the Docker service on all these hosts, and we log into the Docker registry. This is important because now we are logging to gitlab.devlab, and you see we define these hosts in the base role, so we are using it. And we also are using HTTPS, and we can do that because this host has a certificate that we trust by default in the base role. So we have to run the base role before Docker and normally before anything else, so that we get the host here and the certificate trusted on this host. And we use the GitLab root password from the vault. So this will give us a running Docker daemon on each one of these hosts. And then we can continue with the swarm. We initialize the swarm. How do we do that? We use the Docker swarm, Docker underscore swarm model. And we just say state is present, and we register the result because we need to get the manager token and the worker token from the result. Then we add the other managers, and here we go through all the other managers and we run this simple task join, and we get the token from the variable that we saved in the previous host. We need to have a static IB at least for one of the swarm nodes, and this is the IB of the primary manager. So we get the manager token from its host variables, and we run also the same model with join, but now we supply the worker token from the host vars of the primary manager. So by now we should have a running swarm. We should have initialized a swarm. Now this is a test, and I wanted to keep it in this playbook because I do not want to create a different playbook for it. And you can change this IB if you have a running Ollama host. What we are doing here is installing chatbot Ollama on the swarm primary manager, but it doesn't matter where we install it because it will run on some host, on one of the hosts in the network. This is the image, and this comes from the documentation, and we have one replica. We could add more if we want. And notice what I am doing here. This is a hack, and this is very important. Without these, the service will not work. So I'm publishing port 3000, which is by default the default port of chatbot Ollama, and I'm using protocol TCP and the mode host. I could not run any service in Docker Swarm using the overlay network, the ingress network, which is the default network for publishing ports on Swarm. The reason is I could not get the ingress network to bind this port, I mean that published port, on IPv4. The overlay network, or I don't know, the Docker network, publishes this port on IPv6, only on IPv6, even if the host does not have any interface with an IPv6. So the swarm publishes this port on IPv6 even if IPv6 is disabled on all interfaces. There is no IPv6 at all. To override that, we need to bypass the overlay network. So I'm using the host network, and you need to specify all these and the mode global so that you can bypass the overlay network. Then I have the environment variable to link to my Ollama host. I will run the script now, and I will speed it up a little, but I will keep it. I will not cut it. I will keep it so that you can see the progress. If you look here, this task takes a long time to complete. It takes about 2 minutes because it needs to build from Node.js, download Node.js dependencies and build them. So it takes about 2 minutes to completely deploy, but we can check our swarm. If I log to the manager, so if I ask Docker, what nodes do we have? We have 5 nodes. One of them is the leader and the others. So if I ask Docker node ps, we have a node that is running, but that it is still preparing this. Oh. So it has been under preparing about a minute ago. I know it takes about 2 minutes. Running. So now our service is running, and let's check here. So this is the IP of the of the primary manager, and this is an IP of one of the hosts. And I have did some testing before. So my Ollama server was down. I started it now, and I see that I can access the chatbot on the IP of one of the workers and on the IP of the primary manager, and this works. It detected the model that I have in Ollama, and I can chat with all my bots, with all my models, using a chatbot running in a Docker Swarm cluster that includes 5 nodes running on my Devlab BVE. This is my first time using Swarm. I have never used Swarm in a production project before. And when starting the preparation for this episode, I was expecting Swarm to have some edge over Kubernetes. After experimenting with Swarm for a few days, I think it is still inferior to vanilla Kubernetes. It is very limited when compared to advanced Kubernetes distributions like OpenShift or OKD. I still did not solve the problem with Ingress. So, did you run a service in the Ingress network on Proxmox before? If so, please let me know in the comments. I do not know where to use Swarm in a project. I don't have any idea, nothing in my mind where Swarm would add value to a project over Kubernetes or OKD or something more advanced. So did you use Swarm in a production project before? Did you deploy anything in production on Swarm? Please let me know in the comments. I would love to know if you have a successful implementation in production on Swarm. Next, we will go back to the Linux router as promised. We will set up a state-of-the-art router using Ansible. We will start with DHCP on Kia DHCP, then we will go to bind9 DNS. Maybe we'll experiment also with another server. I still did not prepare the DNS episode. Then we will see some amazing ideas about WireGuard with Ansible, and later we will have more dev containers before we close this season and start preparing for the next season. I'm still looking for feedback on what to do after Proxmox. So if you have any ideas about that, please let me know in the comments below the video or under the article. I want to thank everybody who is supporting me and all the people that send me feedback and comments to make me feel that my work has value to them. If you think that my work has some value to you, please subscribe to my channel and let me know in a comment or like or in the way you like. And finally, I want to express my gratitude and my thanks to Imtiaz Ali for the fantastic idea of trying Docker with Swarm. I have learned a lot when preparing to this episode, and I hope you have learned something with me here. So thank you again for the interesting idea, for the comment, and I hope to see you in the next video.